Genesis 15 through 17, the continuing saga of Abram.
Christy, I love your laugh. As soon as he mentions it.
That man's 99 years old. There is no way I would have gone through what he did, but he did. So I'm like,
Why did he go through what he did?
I know he loved God. But being circumcised at 99?
Yeah.
It's easier when you're a 1 day old and they don't tell you in the hospital.
And you don't know what's happening.
Right, like they came in and tell you, oh, we did it. Oh.
About that.
Yeah, 99.
See, I never knew where that came from until reading this. So,
Seriously?
seriously.
Oh.
There is a wealth of knowledge in this Bible.
Amen.
I mean, everything we need to live is right here. How to treat people, how to love God, where we came from, why we do the things we do, how we should act, how we should treat each other. And back in the day, even what not to eat, because they didn't know how to cook it. Don't eat pork, because you people are going to eat, you're just going to cut the head off the pig and eat it raw. Don't do that. And right? That's probably what they would have done.
Yeah.
God knew all this. He knew all this, so he protected them as he protects us. So Abram did whatever God said he should do, because he tried to be blameless in front of God. He obeyed God completely. Everything we read in the Bible is a lesson for us, how we should act. So, as we go through chapters 15, 16, and 17, I had a lot of questions. So, if we look at the first 5 verses, what are some of the things that you guys had questions about? All right, verse 1, God tells Abram, do not be afraid. Afraid of what? What do you think that Abram might be afraid of right here in chapter 15?
Well, he still doesn't have an heir.
He doesn't have an heir. That could be a big problem. He's got a lot of stuff, right? And he doesn't want all his stuff to go to a manservant. That's one thing to worry about. What else could he possibly be worried about?
I don't know, because he just fought this war with all these kings and came out ahead.
Okay, but what do people do once you beat them?
Retaliate.
They don't want to retaliate. So
Not that.
Abram's got a lot of things to worry about. Where's all my stuff going to go? Are these people going to continue to come after me? What's going to go on? So he's got a couple things to worry about. And God always tells us, be not afraid. That's like one of the most heard things throughout the Bible. The Father tells us, be not afraid. Jesus says, be not afraid. Don't worry.
366 times.
There you
Really?
go. Gee, 366 times.
Did you
Why
say
is
that?
that?
One for every day, including leap day. Leap year.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that
That's
amazing?
how many times it releases.
It does.
It does, really.
Did you Google it?
366 times.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't gone through and counted it, but I read it.
Well,
I'm going with somebody else's information, but I presume it's true. Yeah. So if I'm wrong, forgive me.
I've got a software package that does that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
seriously. Okay, so Abram's got a lot of things to be afraid of, but God, as always, says, don't worry about it. I got this. As a matter of fact, Christy found a picture one time, and I can't find it again.
Oh, yeah.
It was on the web. It's a picture of Jesus like this. Shh, I got this. And I can't find it.
No.
Gary.
It's gone.
I am your shield, kind of going back to Ephesians 6, the full armor of God.
I am your shield, your very great reward. God's everything we need. So even if Abram had nothing, he'd have nothing to worry about, because God is there with him.
And that translates over into our life, because God is our reward now.
Right. Not sometime in the future.
Right.
Right now. Because if we truly love God, if we truly follow Him, we've got nothing to worry about. We're always going to have problems. There's no guarantee that we will be problemless. But when God is with us, we know that we're covered. We're covered. All right, what else do we have here? Well, in verse 3, it goes to what Brianna said, that you've given me no children. So a servant in my household will be my heir. In verse 4, God makes a big promise to him. God, you can read it.
Verse 4.
Mhm.
Then God's message came, don't worry, he won't be your heir. A son from your body will be your heir. I like verse 5 though.
Okay, go ahead. Read verse 5.
Then he took him outside and said, look at the sky, count the stars. Can you do it? Count your descendants. You're going to have a big family, Abram.
If indeed you can count them, if you can count all those stars, so shall your offspring be. And what did Abram do?
Believe the
He
Lord.
believed the Lord. He believed the Lord. Now here's a key verse. Verse 6. Why do you think this is important?
Oh, because for God to declare him set right with God, that's a huge thing.
Abram believed the Lord and he credited to him as righteousness.
You got faith.
Before Jesus even came, before God even revealed himself to us as Jesus, Abram believed that God was the Lord of his life. So righteousness, that's when you're in a right relationship with God, you're justified with him. That means Abram was saved right at this point. He believed that God was God. Incredible. Paul tells us in Romans chapter 4, verses 1 through 5. What then shall we say that Abram, our forefather according to the flesh, discovered in this matter? If in fact Abram was justified by works, he had something to boast about, but not before God. What does Scripture say? Abram believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Now to the one who works, wages are not credited as a gift, but as an obligation. However, to the one who does not work, but trusts God, who justifies the ungodly, their faith is credited as righteousness. So Paul's saying right there that Abram was saved by his faith in God. And that's how we are saved. We can't earn it, because if we did something to earn it, that means God would owe us salvation. That's not true. Salvation is a gift. We don't deserve it, can't earn it. It's given to us as a free gift. So,
Chapter and verse in Romans was that?
that was chapter 4, verses 1 through 5. So 6 is a very important verse.
Chapter 4.
Chapter 4, Romans chapter 4, verses 1 through 5. Very important verse. Okay, what else do we have here? There's a lot of things happening pretty quickly. What else do we see?
Well, he wants him to make a sacrifice right away of 3 different animals, which is, 3 different.
And the birds.
Oh, yeah, and the bird. Yeah, that's right. Heifer, goat, ram, and each 3 years, along with a dove and a young pigeon.
Do you have any idea what the significance is of the 3-year-old?
Yeah.
I don't. So let's assign someone to do the research on that. Who wants to take that one? To figure out why it's 3 years old and why these different animals. Who wants to take that?
Too bad Sue's not here.
I can do it.
She's out
Okay.
sick this week.
Okay, so Bree's going to take verse 9. Verse 9. Why 3 years old? And why those animals?
Yeah.
Were they the sacrificial animals of Leviticus?
I think I remember a ram being sacrificed
Yeah.
when Isaac,
Yeah.
with Isaac, a ram got
Ram.
caught in the fence. I remember that.
But I don't think there it said specifically 3 years old though, did it?
And we know when the Bible's specific, there's a good reason for
Yeah.
it.
Well, isn't 3 one of those numbers that it's supposed to be?
Mhm.
Well, 3 is the.
My Bible says that 3 years is the prime age for most sacrificial animals.
Okay.
I mean, that's a footnote.
That makes sense.
So they were cut in half and then the birds were placed on top.
Now remember, when we get to Leviticus, it's gonna tell us how these animals were prepared
Yep,
in detail.
chapter 117. I have a footnote to that
Okay.
in Leviticus,
So,
yeah.
Not that Leviticus is gonna be the most interesting chapter
No.
or book we're gonna go through, but it's necessary. Because to the Israelites, it laid out everything that they had to do. So, good stuff. Okay, what else do we have here?
I was kind of taken back by how often, because I found it more than just this one time in, I think it was 8.
Okay.
He questions God. How will I know that? And he does it later on too. I understand that, or I was always told, like when you're praying, it's supposed to be like you're speaking to God. But I never took it as you're allowed to question him,
It's, we can lament to God, we can question God, He'll give us answers, but usually in the Bible, when you see somebody asking questions of God, something usually happens, right? Yeah, or when you laugh at God, which Abram does later on,
Oh, man.
as we read, something usually happens. In most cases, God takes your voice away and doesn't let you speak for a while. So yeah, this is pretty amazing stuff, that God is letting Abram get away with this stuff.
There's a lot of people in the Bible that ask God. Gideon.
Oh, yeah.
Gideon asked
Gideon
God.
tested him.
I wonder
He
if God
tested
takes
him, yeah.
just
Yeah.
so much joy in them that he just has fun with them. And he
That could
lets
be.
them do it because he loves them so much and takes so much pleasure in Abram's company that, sure, go ahead, Abram, ask me anything you want.
I think that shows the relationship
Right.
that he
Yes.
wants to have with us.
Yep.
You have questions, come ask me.
Yeah.
I remember when my son was having some issues with his cancer. My daughter-in-law had called me and said they found spots on his brain also. And I kept it together while I was talking to her. When I hung up the phone, it was like, Lord, why? He's a good kid. He's not a murderer. He doesn't, he's a hard worker. Why? And God said, why not?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can never answer those questions.
Right.
No.
But I mean, that's what I needed, that
Right.
peace.
Yeah. That's the first thing they tell you when you take the clinical pastoral education part of training. Don't answer questions you have no answer for. We live in a fallen world. Sin is in the world, suffering is in the world. This kind of stuff is going to happen. Sooner or later, maybe it's not until we get to heaven, will we find out why it happened. It could be to strengthen somebody else, or it could be just because we live in a fallen world with disease. We just don't know. I remember one time when someone passed away, a high school kid. Oh, God needed another artist in heaven. No, he does not. He's got more than enough. The young boy died. That's all we can say. We can help his parents go through the grieving process. God doesn't need another thing in heaven. God doesn't need us, except He created us because He loves us. Plain and simple. He created us to love Him because He loves us, and He wants us to worship Him because He loves us and we love Him. So things are going to happen, and we're not going to know.
If we think back where Abram negotiated with God on Lot, from 50 to 40, so maybe he figured he could have some doubts.
Could be. And also, we know that in verse 6, Abram's in a right relationship with God. He has that relationship with God. He can talk to God. He's already there. Not that he can't lose it. We can always fall back. We can always start sinning again and not repent, and that's the end of the story. But so far, Abram hasn't done that. He's just asking a question. How come? How are you going to do this for me? Okay.
Maybe he just needs a little reassurance, wants some reassurance.
Yeah, and God's going to do that. He says, okay, bring me these things. Bring me these things. And once again, Abram just does it. Doesn't ask why. He didn't say, that's not what I asked. Abram says, okay, you asked for this, I'll get it for you. Okay, what's next that causes you some questions?
Well, in verse 7, to take possession of the land. Brought you out of Ur of Chaldeans to give you the land to take possession of it. So the promised land is brought up again.
Mm-hmm. And we know that the promised land is full of the enemies from the previous chapter that we read.
Yeah.
And God is just saying, you're not going to have to fight for it. I'm going to give it to you.
And that's where this one map that I found.
Okay.
All the ones that needed to be taken out so they could live peacefully.
Yeah.
I think there's one with the chart that you, or the page that you had passed out, the Amorites.
Mm-hmm. That's all the enemies.
Philistines.
God's going to take care of all those people. So easily. Like that. What else do we have here? What else is going on?
In 13, he says, he kind of tells them that you will be enslaved, you will be mistreated,
Well, your people.
your people, for
Yep.
400 years. I mean, he already says it's not going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of interesting that he warned them.
I thought it was interesting how in 10, how it says he split down the middle and laid the house on opposite sides of each other, but he didn't split the birds. So there has to be a significance with that as well.
Right.
My book says they're too small.
That's what mine says.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yours too?
Yeah.
Footnotes? Yeah, it just says they're too small.
Okay, and then at the end of it says, as the sun went down, a deep sleep overcame Abram, and then a sense of dread, dark and heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what does that mean?
Okay. I believe that he had a thick and dreadful darkness because of what God was revealing to him next. That his people would be in slavery for 400
Okay,
years.
all right.
So did he tell him in a dream then, do you think?
That's what
That's how I took it.
Yeah, sounds like
That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah, because he's in a deep sleep, and you just get this idea that
Right.
this nightmare came upon him about God revealing the 400 years of slavery. Now, that's the other two handouts you guys have. In the Bible, it talks about in Exodus chapter 12, verse 40, 430 years of captivity. So we have to be careful because a lot of people look at the Bible, and if there's any differences, they say, well, look, the Bible's wrong. It doesn't even agree with itself.
Which one am I looking at?
Both of those. Both of those handouts talk about where the 400 and where the 430 comes from.
Oh,
And the colored one gives you a timeline. So what we always have to be prepared for is people that are going to come at us and say, the Bible doesn't agree even with itself. There's a good book out there by Ken Ham where he disputes all these different, what do they call them? Well, what people say are differences. He's got a 2-volume set out there, so I gotta buy that sooner or later. But you get it on the website. Ken Ham, and I'll set it out. I'll bring it next class, what the website's called, so you can check that out. So those are the things that we have to be ready to talk about. And they do that with the Gospels, the 4 different, or some of the different versions of the stories in the Gospels. Some of them are slightly different, but the main theme comes through. The first thing we have to remember is the 4 writers of the Gospel were writing to different audiences, They were different themselves, and that's part of the reason for the differences. But the theme is still the same. So this will give you a way to back up. Is it 400 or 430? And actually, the answer is
Yes.
the answer is both.
On the chart on the pass out in the first covenant, second covenant, and third covenant, we'll probably get to the third one tonight, but to leave Aaron, and then the basics of the sacrifice, and then the circumcision.
Yeah, we'll get there when we finish chapter 17. So hold on to that thought, Jerry. So here, God is promising Abram that he's going to have all these people, all these ancestors, and then he presents Abram with the vision that your people are going to be enslaved. So it's causing Abram some grief.
Okay. I had, I found the fire pot and the torch interesting, so I kind of focused on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And did some digging.
Great, thank you.
The animals, it was a ritual, and it kind of correlates with a Hittite ritual, but it's different. It's a promise between two people, and either both people or one person goes through the cut animal, through the halves of the animals.
Okay.
The belief is the fire pot and the torch represent God. The fire pot is Israel in captivity in Egypt. There's references to them being in a furnace or something like that. And then the blazing torch is like the pillar of fire that leads them. It's also thought that as this passes through the animals are burnt up. In other words, they're sacrificed. It also says that that anybody who passes through this fire, or through these animals, they're making that vow that if this covenant ever be broken, then that's what will happen to the person that passes through the animals. So God is in essence saying, I would just as soon die before this covenant fail. So he's basically telling Abraham, hey, this is the real deal.
This is solid.
But Abram doesn't go through, does he? Only
No,
God does.
Abraham is in his deep sleep when this happens.
It's not a man-made covenant, it was a covenant by God to us.
Yeah.
And then it also says, all that he was to Abraham, he will also be to you. So he has made that covenant with Abraham.